Hey everybody, and welcome to another Cricut Craft tutorial. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and I would love to have you as part of my crafty family here on YouTube. In today's video, this is one of my favorite things to do with Cricut. I'm going to show you guys how to use your Cricut to screen print. You only need a few supplies, which is great, and honestly, it's pretty inexpensive once you have everything because you can make so many shirts out of just one jar of paint. So to do this shirt specifically, I am using Speedball Night Glow in the green color. I will link everything down below in the description for you. This is such a cool paint. It glows in the dark, and I'll be sure to show you guys it glowing. I also recommend having some cardstock on hand. I use this both inside the shirt, and then I also put a piece on my table to lay any of my dirty materials on it so that the printing ink doesn't get all over my table. Then you're going to need some vinyl. I just use some StarCraft Permanent HD vinyl. I use it in a color that I just have a lot of, but really any vinyl should work just fine for you. Then I also recommend having a pin pen or weeding tool to use to weed out your vinyl. You'll need a squeegee for both application of the vinyl to the screen as well as applying the paint to the screen. You're going to need a good quality transfer tape and a screen. I got all of my supplies off of Amazon for the screen printing, and then the vinyl and the transfer tape, the pin pen, and the squeegee are all from 143 Vinyl. I'll link everything down below for you guys so it's really easy for you to find. And then we are going to make this super cute Mickey skeleton glow in the dark t-shirt. This is really fun. I got my design from antitay.com. You can sign up for her membership. I'll link that down below, and that will include this SVG. So let's go ahead over to Design Space. I'm going to show you guys how to cut this out and make it really easy so that you know where to weed and how to weed it. We'll cut it out and apply it to the screen and then get ready to paint. I'm using an SVG from Antitay's business membership, which you guys can sign up for down below. She's got a ton of really great designs, but this is the one we're going to use to do our screen printing with, and he's really fun. But it can be a little bit confusing when you go to make a stencil on what parts you want to weed out. So a way that helps me is to make a box around this, and the other reason you want to do this is to add some border around your design so that when you go to do your screen printing, you're not having to cover as much up with masking tape or painter's tape. So what I'm going to do first is go ahead and grab a square. And what I want to do is I'm going to click send to back for my square, and I want to unlock my square as well. That way I can see my Mickey over my square and size it so that I have a decent amount of border around him while still making sure Mickey fits. Now all I need to do is select the square and Mickey, and I can just simply attach. There's really no need to do slicing with this because you can just attach. It's still going to cut out just fine. That way now you know that when you go to weed this, you don't want to weed the box. You want to weed everything that's like the edge. So you want to weed the outlines and the insides and all the things that you want the paint to go through. So it's not like making a decal. It's the opposite. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually flip this on my screen because I do want Mickey to face a certain way on my shirt. It doesn't really matter unless you have words or you can see, if something's really backwards. But with something like this, you can put it either direction. But I like to flip mine on my canvas before I go over to my mat to make it because I find that allows it to not accidentally forget to mirror. So what I do now, and then I don't forget to mirror either. So now what I'm going to do is go to make it, and you'll see now that I have my square and my Mickey Mouse. It's going to cut around my square and the Mickey. So what we're going to do is click continue, and we're cutting this on StarCraft HD. It's really an easy vinyl to work with, and I love using it for screen printing. Now what I'm going to do is select the vinyl cut setting, and I'll take you over to the machine and let you guys watch this cut. So like I said, it's a little bit easier to know what to weed when you have this square around your design. And I know it's a little bit hard to see, but there is a square around here. So you'll see that what I weed out is actually gonna be where the paint is gonna go. So it's a lot easier to tell where you wanna weed if you put a little square around it. So I'll let you guys watch me weed. Once you're done weeding, and you can see how that box kind of came in handy, you're gonna get some transfer tape. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is roll out some transfer tape. And this is medium tack from 143 vinyl, my favorite. And normally I would tell you don't touch your transfer tape, but in this case, I want you to touch it a little bit. I want you to kind of stick it to maybe your table, things like that. But what I'm gonna go ahead and do really quick is just trim off a piece. And I don't care that my piece is gonna be a little bit bigger than my design. I'd rather have too much than not enough. I'm just gonna roll the rest of that back. And then all I'm gonna do, I just wanna stick it to my table. It doesn't matter if you get dirt on it. You actually kind of want to get dirt on it. You want it a little bit less sticky than what it is. So I'm gonna take it and stick it to my pants, which it's probably gonna end up with pet hair on it, and that's okay. But I just wanna get it a little bit less sticky than what it is. That way it's just a little bit easier to get the vinyl off of it. So now what I'm gonna do is lay my design face down on my transfer tape. And I'm not gonna do a lot of burnishing on this. I'm gonna just use my hands because again, I don't want it to stick super well to my transfer tape. I just want it to stick enough. And so what I'm gonna do now is peel it off, and I'm just gonna do this. You can see I'm kind of folding the backing over and rolling it off, and you'll see that certain parts maybe won't stick because we didn't burnish. But again, I don't wanna burnish. I don't wanna press it too hard on here. So I'm just gonna go slowly, and I'm just going to use my hand to kind of help if something's not sticking. But rolling it this way really does make a big difference, and it's okay if you need to kind of roll it back down and press something down a little bit, because there are a few small pieces in here. So you'll just want to watch as you're rolling off to make sure that everything is staying stuck down. And see, I've got a little spot over here that's not quite down, so we'll just press that a little bit more. Got another little spot right there. And once you're done with your transfer tape, you'll see right at the top, you have your decal on your paper. You're gonna leave it on the table just like this, straight down with the adhesive side of your vinyl up. And then I want you to take your screen and just lay it right on top of your vinyl. This is a super easy way to do this. It doesn't matter if this is centered or straight or anything like that on your screen. It just needs to be on the screen. What I'm gonna do now is take a squeegee, and now I'm gonna burnish my vinyl. I want to make sure I burnish this really, really well, and I do recommend burnishing on the flat side. So you see how my frame is up and my flat side of my frame is down. That way you don't run the risk of scratching or ripping your screen, I should say. Now, I will say replacing the screen on these is pretty easy, so you don't have to worry too much. But if you can save yourself the hassle, go ahead and do that. Now, I want to go through and just find any of those little pieces that might pop off, and I'm just gonna burnish those ones by themselves. So I wanna make sure any of these thin pieces, especially this part on his tail, is well stuck down, and I just wanna go through and just make sure anything thin has been pressed. Now we can flip our screen back over, and you'll see that we are now on the transfer tape side. It's now time to take your transfer tape off. You're gonna do this very slowly, and just like how you took the backing off. You're gonna fold that transfer tape over so that it's a really sharp angle. You're almost folding it completely flat on itself. Now you again wanna go very, very slow. Take your time. You don't need to rush this. You absolutely can take as much time as you need to make sure that everything is well stuck down. Now I start at the corner, and then once I've gotten that, I'll go more at a straight shape. Now I know there's going to be some spots that may not want to stick, so I'm going to make sure just to watch very carefully. Any of these small thin lines, any of the dots that aren't connected to a lot of things, you just want to watch as you're pulling up your transfer tape to make sure that everything is well held down. As we're pulling up our transfer tape, you're just watching. So I'm going to let this go. I'll let you guys finish watching me roll this off, and then I'll show you one more trick. Once you've removed your transfer tape, go ahead and flip it over again so that your flat side is against the table. And I want you to come back in and I want you to just go ahead and burnish this again. That way, if when you pulled the transfer tape off, it made any kind of bubbles around your edges, this is going to prevent that from happening. You want to make sure that your stencil is well down and that you don't have any bubbles along any of your edges. The bubbles can lead to bleeding, and we definitely don't want that. The next thing that we're going to do is grab some masking tape or some painter's tape, whatever you have will work. And we're going to just masking tape a little bit around him. I really don't need to do the whole screen because I can probably not make a mess. But I do like to make sure that I get the top and the bottom and around the edges. So you just want to give it a good edge here. Make sure that your tape overlaps itself and your stencil just a little bit. And again, watch for any bubbles with your tape because any paint will seep under a bubble. Now this part is imperative that you do it, and you want to make sure that you're very careful with how you do it. And again, I like to make sure I really do get the top and the bottom more than anything because that is where your paint is going to pool a little bit more than on the sides. So I just like to make sure that I get all the way up to the top and all the way down to the bottom. That way, if I get any paint up there, it's not going to make a mess. Now again, I don't necessarily have to cover all the edges. I don't need to do that, but I'll give it another little layer over here just because I've got some tape and it's not a big deal. And we'll just add another little line over here. That just gives us a little extra protection for when we go to do the screen print on the shirt. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab our shirt and get that all set up and show you guys how to do that part. The really great thing with screen printing is that you can really use pretty much any kind of shirt that you want. You can use high polyester, all cotton, it really doesn't matter. This one is a Jersey's brand and it is 100% cotton. Now I went over it with a lint brush, and then what we're gonna do, and you wanna do this anytime you use screen print, is take some paper. This is just some cardstock. I do a couple layers, but you can just do a single layer if you want to. This shirt's also relatively thick. So what I'm going to do is slide this inside of my shirt. And what this does is it helps with any bleeding that you may get from your screen printing. That is a big thing that you want to make sure that you avoid. And just like when you do a heat press, you want to make sure that your shirt is laying nice and flat. Slide that out back a little bit. And you just want to make sure that it's laying really, really flat. So you want to make sure you don't have any wrinkles. I've got a big one back here that I got to get rid of. I can still feel it. So just feel your shirt, make sure that you don't have any wrinkles on the back or up at the collar, because you want to make sure that your screen is going to lay as flat as possible. And then you also want to make sure that your shirt is straight. So that's another important thing. And my cardstock, I can feel and slide it around as I need to based on where my screen is going to go. Once you're satisfied with how flat your shirt is, I'm just going to lay my screen on it just to kind of see where I want my Mickey to sit. You want to make sure, just like when you do HTV, that it's about 3 fingers from the collar, so I know I can go up a little bit more. And then you just want to make sure it is straight and even. That looks really good. I just do this to kind of get an idea of where I like it, where I want it, things like that. The next thing we're going to do is grab our screen printing ink and a little spoon. I'm using Speedball brand Night Glow in green. This is an awesome product. If you have not used screen printing ink, this is a fantastic one to start with. So what I'm first going to do is go ahead and open my jar. You want to make sure that you're real careful and you don't get this on anything. So I always keep an extra piece of cardstock over to the side to set my lid on and to set my spoon on when I'm done. This is what your screen print ink will look like in the jar. It's really easy to use. But one thing that I like to do before I start and put it on my shirt is it's called flooding your screen. So what you want to do is make sure that it's not sitting on your shirt to do this. So a lot of times I'll just lift it up and do it, but it's not exactly like the prettiest looking thing. It's hard to do with one hand, so what I'm going to do is go ahead, and I'm just using an old scooper from some kitten milk. If you guys know me, I foster cats, so this is an old scooper from some kitten milk. So what I do is I go ahead and I put my ink all along my shirt here, and I do a generous amount. You don't need to do a ton, but you do want to make sure that you go all the way across, and you want to make sure that you do have quite a bit on there, but you don't have to pour like the whole jar on it. And then I go ahead and set my spoon and my jar off to the side. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and lift up my screen, and you'll see that it's not on my shirt. And I'm going to do this with it at an angle, and it's called flooding your screen. So you're going to go ahead and take your screen printing ink and pull it down. Now I'm just using a squeegee from 143 vinyl. This works fine, but you can get a big squeegee if you prefer. It's just personal preference. For me, I like to use these little ones, especially when I'm doing a smaller screen print. So once you've gotten this flooded, and it's okay if you've got a little bit like sitting out, no big deal. I'm going to set this over to the side again on that piece of cardstock. So what I want to do now is lay this down, and you want to be very careful, and you want to make sure that you got it straight and where you want it and centered. Lay it down. Now is when we're going to apply the ink to the shirt. So in this case, we're going to go and pull the ink all the way up. And, oops, I missed his ear, but that's okay. We'll go back down. And you're just going to go all around onto your design here. And you'll see that you have a ton of ink kind of sitting on your squeegee. And you can just pull that off and then just go ahead and pull it back across. Now, I'm not using a ton of pressure. I'm using a fairly light amount, but you want to make sure that you're covering your entire design with ink. This is such a fun design, and I love how easy these screen prints really are to do. Don't be intimidated by a screen print. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to give him a little light coat here. And I want to just make sure that I've gotten all of him, so I'm going to go ahead and go side to side as well. And that way you just make sure that you get all of him. I'm holding my screen down while doing this because you want to make sure that you do that. And don't worry that you kind of got like sploogy ink everywhere. It's okay. You just want to make sure that you're not getting the ink along the edges. You see where like there's no tape covering? You just want to watch for that. And I'm going to just make sure I got his nose because now I'm a little concerned I missed his little nose. I'm just going to make sure I get his face really good. All these little thin lines, you want to make sure you cover those really well as well. So again, I'm just sort of doing a light layer over him. Once you've gotten enough ink that you're happy with, you can go ahead and press down and take your extra ink and you want to put it right back in your jar. You can actually do a zillion shirts with a single jar of screen print ink, which I love. I think that's one of the things I love about screen printing. You don't waste a lot of material. You really use very little ink, and you can do tons and tons and tons of designs with just a single jar. So I'm going to go ahead and finish scraping all this off. And again, I want to make sure I get it off of the edge there without getting it on the shirt. And again, I put that over onto my cardstock. Now what we can do is lift up our screen and make sure that we're happy. But I do see a little spludge, so I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. Again, just making sure that I get all the excess ink off. And then what we can do, like I said, is lift this up. Now when you do this, you want to hold your shirt down. I'm going to hold mine at the bottom. I know it's a little hard for you guys to see, but I'm holding it at the bottom, and I'm just going to pull my screen off straight up. And I'm going to go set my screen over to the side and show you guys our really cool design. Now it's really important that we let this dry fully before we do anything else to it. So what I'm going to do is allow this to dry for about 4 hours, and then I'm going to show you guys how to heat set this so that when you go to wash your shirt, your screen print doesn't come off. Now make sure that you close the jar lid, and you can wash all of this other stuff just in the sink, and you want to make sure that you wash off your screen really well. Don't scrub it really hard, just use your hand to get any of that excess ink off. It's really important that you wash your screen before your screen print ink dries. Just use some warm water and just your regular kitchen sink will do. No need to go crazy and use a sponge or anything. It'll come off with your hands. You can take your vinyl off at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and clean my screen. I'll leave a video down below that shows you cleaning the screen, but this video will be a little bit too long with that. So I'm going to go clean my screen, and in about 4 hours we'll come back and show you how to heat set. The last step when doing screen printing is to make sure that you heat set this. Now, you can do this with an easy press or an iron. Whatever you've really got will work, but I use my heat press. I have it set to 320 degrees, and we're going to set this for 40 seconds. This is just done on a medium pressure. You don't have to do anything too crazy. Once it's done heat setting, just let it sit, let it cool, because it will be pretty warm. And once it's done with that, you can take it off and you can wash this, wear this, and it's ready to go. I'll show you guys it glowing in the dark because it's really, really cute once it's glowing, and it's just a really fun shirt. I hope you guys had so much fun learning how to screen print with your Cricut. This was a really cool design and I really enjoyed making it. I hadn't tried the glow in the dark before and I'm really glad that I did. It's so fun when it glows. This is such a cool product. It's really inexpensive to use. And again, I got this design from AuntieTay.com with her membership. So if you want to join, that's linked down below. All the products that I used are also linked down in the description box below. If you're on mobile, you will need to click the little down arrow in order to open up the description box, but everything is linked down there for you guys. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me during this really fun tutorial. If you have any questions, let me know in those comments down below. I'm always happy to answer those for you. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I hope you all have a wonderful day and happy crafting.